In this video, we will cover useful Excel functions. Lecture 5, Other Functions. The if-error function allows you to specify a default value for a cell if it contains an error. This is often useful if you want to display 0 or blank as the default value if the formula results in an error. The formula is given by equals if error value, value if error, where value is the formula that you want to use, and value if error is the default value you want to use if the formula results in an error. As an example, suppose you want to find the average sales for a product by taking the total sales divided by the number of units for the product. In this example, we have the product ID in column A. We have the total sales in column B, units sold in column C, and in column D we have the average sales, which we will calculate. You note that product D has no sales, and if we take 0 divided by 0, it will produce an error. So you can use the if-error function to default these to 0 and avoid this. The first formula in cell D2 would be equals if-error B2 divided by C2, which is our formula that we want to do, and then comma 0 as we want it to default to 0 if there is an error. We can then apply this formula to the remaining cells, and this would result in the averages as shown. Note that for product D, the average is shown as 0, which is the result of our if-error function. The offset function allows you to reference a location in a workbook by referencing how many rows and columns it is away from some base location. The formula is given by equals offset reference, rows, columns, height, width. The reference specifies the starting cell that you will base the offset function from. It can refer to either a cell or a range of adjacent cells. The rows component specifies the number of rows to move from the reference. Positive values move down, a negative value moves up. The columns component specifies the number of columns to move away from the reference point. A positive value moves right, and a negative value moves left. The height component is optional. This component specifies the number of rows the returned value should contain. The width component is also optional, and this component specifies the number of columns the returned value should contain. As an example, suppose you have the following data triangle contained in cells A1 to EF. You want to summarize this data in another table below contained in cells B8 to F9. What you want to do is show the yellow highlighted values from the upper triangle of data in the table at the bottom below. The yellow highlights refer to year 1 ratios. You also want to display the year 2 values in green in the upper table in the table below under year 2. We can use the offset function to do this. We will now utilize Excel to go through this example. So now we are going to use Excel to illustrate the offset function. What we want to do is we want to reference these yellow values in the upper table in the table below, and these green values in the upper table in the table below here. So we want to use the offset function to grab each of the yellow values. We need to first choose our base location. For yellow, we will choose cell A1 to be our base location. So we'll start typing our formula equals offset. We want our reference cell to be A1. And we're going to fix that by pressing F4. And now we need to move down a certain amount of rows and over a certain amount of columns. So we need the first value to actually be this 1.50. So we want to move down 0 rows and move over 0 columns. So we'll take this number 1 right here, and then we'll subtract 1 from it, which gives us 0. So that will move over 0 rows or stay in the same spot. And then for our column number, we'll select this 1 again and subtract 1, which gives us 0. And we won't be using the height and the width components because we only want a single cell. And we can close that and we return our 1.5 value. Now if we move it over one cell, you'll note that it's now referencing this 2 as well as our reference cell of A1. So now it will move down 2 minus 1, so it's going to move down one row, and it's going to move over 2 minus 1 equals 1, one column. So now it's on this 1.45 cell. And we can drag that all the way across, and it will grab each of these values. So for the final value, you can see that it's again referencing A1, and it's going to move down 5 minus 1, so 4 rows, 1, 2, 3, 4, and then it's going to move over 4 rows, 1, 2, 3, 4. So it's referencing the 1.37 value. So then to grab our year 2 values, we'll go equals offset. We'll select our reference cell. This time we're going to make it cell B1. We'll hit F4 to fix it, and we'll use the same method. So we'll take 1, B7 minus 1, so because we want to stay in the same spot, so it'll be 0, and B7 minus 1, as we don't want to move over any columns. We'll close the bracket because we're not going to use height and width because we again just want a single cell, and we get 1.25. Copying the formula over 1, we can see that it again references cell B1, and now it'll move down one row and over one column and return 1.22. And we can drag these over, and then we finally get the last value. So again, it's now going to move down 3 rows, 4 minus 1, so 1, 2, 3, and over 3 rows, 4 minus 1, 1, 2, 3, and grab 1.21. So now we've illustrated the offset function. To illustrate the if-error function, suppose we want to take the ratio of year 1 and year 2. So we'll go equals year 1, so cell B8 divided by B9. And we get a ratio of 1.2, and we drag this across. So using this simple method, we have this error here, divide by 0, and we don't like that. We want to display it as perhaps a default value of 0. So instead of using equals B8 divided by B9, we'll actually use the if-error function. So we'll put our normal formula that we want, which is the first year divided by the second year, or B8 divided by B9. And then we want our default value, if there is an error, to be 0. And now we'll drag this formula across, and this time, because there was an error here, it displays 0 instead of divide by 0.